craft beer. Australians really, really love it. But against large-scale breweries, independent craft brewers have always been up against tough taxation policies, which give an unfair advantage to the big boys in the industry. But in one of the more pleasing features of the budget early this month, Treasurer Scott Morrison has taken action towards evening up the playing ground for Australian independent brewers by announcing very welcome tax cuts and a larger excise rebate. Last week, I reached out to some of Melbourne's independent brewers to see what the recent budget announcement means for them.
Hi, my name's Guy Greenstone and I'm one of the founders of Stomping Ground Brewing Company, as well as the local tap house, as well as Gab's Beer, Cider and Food Fest. We'll be able to employ more people, invest in more equipment and capacity, which is really exciting, which means we'll be able to make more beer, employ more people and grow our business.
Kegs under 48 litres are often favoured by small breweries because they are easier to sell when it comes to pushing higher alcohol beers with unique and unusual flavours. But up until now, these smaller kegs have been taxed at 40% more when compared to the bigger kegs of over 50 litres, which are used by the large-scale breweries.
The big boys make beer at very, very high volume, and it means that they can make it quite cheaply. They employ far less people to make the same litre of beer that we do. In fact, a recent study was done and we employ about 8 times more people per litre of beer than the big boys. So independent brewers, in that respect, are always at a huge disadvantage because they're making beer much more expensively. So the rebate affects us small producers in a very big way.
The rebate that Guy mentioned is part of a wider set of changes in legislation affecting independent breweries. As a part of this year's budget, there was a tax cut on smaller kegs, as well as an increase in the excise rebate they get from $30,000 to $100,000, putting more cash into the pockets of independent breweries.
G'day, my name's Asher, I'm the head brewer at Stomping Ground. Yeah, the tax cuts will do a few things. It'll mean that smaller businesses like ours will have a bit of a saving each year, which is always welcome. It's a wholesale industry when you're making beer, so your margins aren't massive, so any little bit of help is good.
Although Morrison has publicly blazoned his own hopes for cheaper beer for the Australian consumer, and presumably himself, will the prices actually go down?
Hi, my name is Dr. Torgeir Aletti and I'm a lecturer in marketing at RMIT University. A reasonable proportion of my research has been related to craft beer industry. Scott Morrison is not a marketer, but this is assuming some sort of a trickle-down effect and that the brewers will push that extra money they get all the way onto the consumer, and I don't think that that's likely to happen. Because we have a product, craft beer, where the price is relatively inelastic. If the price goes up and down by a little bit, you won't see an enormous increase or decrease in consumption from the consumers.
With brewers being able to reinvest that money and becoming more viable, I think there'll be more brewers entering the market and that will continue downward pressure on pricing. So it will have an effect. It just won't be an immediate effect that changes the price at the tap point overnight.
Dr. Andre Sammartino, Associate Professor of Management and Marketing at the University of Melbourne, agrees.
Given that most of these businesses are not making a great deal of money, most of these businesses are reinvesting any profits they make back into expansion, the likelihood that they would dramatically cut prices is low.
So, cheaper beer may not be on the horizon yet, but
I've come to the Terminus Hotel in Fitzroy North for one of Good Beer Week's events, which brings together established brewers and hopeful home brewers to talk to them about the tax cuts and what it might mean for them.
Here's Justin Spicer, co-founder and co-owner of Old Wives Ales, a gypsy brewing company. For gypsy brewers like him, the excise rebate doesn't really mean a lot.
The excise rebate is a little bit different for us because we're gypsy brewers, so what that means in our industry is that we use spare capacity on other breweries' equipment, so we don't have our own excise licence directly with the ATO. The excise on our beer is actually paid by the brewery that we brew the beer at. So for us in particular, the excise rebate unfortunately doesn't make any difference whatsoever because we don't get any rebate at the moment, let alone the $30,000 that's been on offer to brewers to date.
While we may not be seeing any immediate price reduction with our craft beer, the tax cut on keg sizes may instead boost the variety of beers available at your local haunt.
That's the one main advantage of the new law here, the keg size of 50 litres has been quite restrictive, particularly on small breweries like ours.
Having that tax cut on small kegs means that there is greater profits to be made for small breweries to put their beers in small kegs. That opens up for that market to be able to produce these small kegs in smaller quantities and still be able to make a profit out of it, which is great for the consumer, especially for this consumer that wants variety over anything else.
I think it'll be a really good advantage for us now to be able to put some of those bigger and stranger beers that we make into 30 litre kegs, and it'll be a lot easier, I guess, for venues to buy those kegs from us at the cheaper rate.
It makes no sense to charge a higher excise on a small volume keg. So it's just simplified it really in many ways, but I think it will open up smaller venues to being able to have different beers, bigger, higher alcohol beers in a smaller keg. It means they can move through them more quickly because they do tend to sell a bit slower than, say, your lower ABV beers. Yeah, it's just about variety again.
Ben, who owns a pub in northern New South Wales, is excited for the prospects of a wider variety of beers in the market.
For people like us who are selling beer, and it means that we can get access to better brewers. We don't have to stick with the main industry. So yeah, I really look forward to being able to stock those beers.
So why now? Why has the government suddenly introduced these tax cuts in this year's budget? According to Dr. Sammartino, we can thank stronger lobbying efforts from the Independent Brewers Association, combined with the sheer number of breweries which have popped up in electorates all over the country, making it a politically smart move.
It's actually a pretty easy story to tell politically. You sort of look a bit grinchy to sort of say, I don't like jobs, I don't like tourism, I don't like people having fun. So I guess Scott Morrison read the tea leaves the right way and found something that makes for good press.
It's certainly good press. Craft beer breweries have proliferated at an astounding rate. The number of small breweries has doubled twice in the last 5 years. In 2018, that number is about 500. Melburnians in particular can't get enough of craft beer.
So I think that good beer resonates with consumers in Melbourne. It's not only a national trend, but a worldwide trend. But yeah, beer, what's more exciting than beer? Nothing.
So, if we want to actually see cheaper beer, as well as more variety, what should the government be doing?
The reality is the excise level in Australia is high, irrespective of format. The governments and its governments in Australia are pretty addicted to the excise they get on it, whether it's beer, petrol, cigarettes, any of those formats, stamp duty on houses. It's just one of those things that's it's a easy form of taxation, and we pay higher excise than just about anywhere in the world. So how will you get lower beer prices in Australia? Lower the excise level.
So our craft beer hasn't really become cheaper, but we can expect more exciting experimentation on the scene. Cheers to that.